In the heart of Enugu, where red dust kissed the city streets, lived two souls from two very different worlds. First, there was Mara Okafor. She was the pride of Nsukka, the only daughter of a retired civil servant and a caterer. She was graceful, sharp, and fiercely intelligent. Her family valued education and reputation above all else. Mara was quiet but confident, the kind of girl who preferred a challenging conversation over shallow flattery. She had plenty of male friends, and of course, people whispered, calling her too free. But Mara, focused on her future in publishing, never paid them any mind. Then, there was Daniel Adebayo. His family was wealthy, Yoruba, and influential. He was the handsome, charming son of a successful contractor, and he knew it. He arrived on the campus of the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, like a prince, with a reputation that walked ahead of him. As a theater arts student, he was dramatic, playful, and had a smile that could disarm anyone. Commitment? Daniel was said to be allergic to it. He was the campus heartbreaker, the boy every girl knew and every parent worried about. He was a force of nature, and Mara was the calm before the storm. Their worlds collided during the university's literary week. Daniel, the star actor, strolled into rehearsals late, flashing his signature cocky grin. "Sorry I'm late. Beautiful people," he announced. Star actors don't rush for small rehearsals. From across the hall, Mara, coordinating the stage, replied without even looking up. Star actors also know how to respect time. Daniel was instantly intrigued. He laughed. "I like you already." She rolled her eyes and shot back. "I don't like you at all." In that moment, a spark was lit, not of romance, but of a rivalry that would soon become something much more. At first, they were like oil and water. He'd tease her, and she'd ignore him. But he was persistent. He started bringing her snacks during late-night study sessions, saying, "Even serious people need to eat puff puff." He'd walk her to her hostel, claiming it was just for safety. Daniel's friends saw the change. "Guy, you Dave fall for that English babo. She go humble you," they'd joke. He would just laugh it off. Mara's friends were just as cautious. "You know that Daniel boy? He's a heartbreaker. Don't let him deceive you," they warned. "I'm not stupid," Mara would insist, even as her heart began to flutter whenever he was near. When they finally started dating, it sent ripples across their circles. It was a quiet relationship at first, but soon, it became the biggest news on campus. Mara's family was wary. Her father doubted a boy with Daniel's reputation could ever be a steady husband. Daniel's mother was even less impressed. She had envisioned a glamorous Lagos girl for her son, not a quiet, simple girl from Nsukka. "She doesn't even wear makeup," she'd complained. But Daniel stood firm. "She doesn't need it, Mummy. She's real." They held on to each other, a silent promise against the whispers and the doubts. And then, something incredible happened. Daniel Adebayo, the campus playboy, began to change. Nobody believed it would last. They thought he was just chasing the one girl who hadn't immediately fallen for his charm. But Daniel surprised everyone, including himself. It started with small things. He began showing up to lectures early, just because he knew Mara hated lateness. He'd sit beside her, not really listening to the professor, but just watching the serious look on her face as she took notes. He even started going to church again. His friends were relentless. "Daniel, you have fallen in love," one would say. "You've left us for that English babe, right?" another would tease. He would just smile and say, "My guy, when you find peace, you'll understand. I have everything I want in her." He wasn't joking. For the first time, Daniel wasn't playing a part. Mara was changing too. The girl who used to roll her eyes at love stories was now humming to herself, a soft smile always on her lips. Her best friend, Amaka, would tease her. "That Daniel boy, did he use something on you?" And Mara would laugh, her cheeks flushing. "He's not what you think. He said I make him calm." They grew into each other, not with a sudden explosion, but like a slow, beautiful sunrise. When she was stressed with her final year project, he'd bring her roasted corn and say, Eat first before you faint inside these books. When his drama rehearsals ran late, she'd be there in the audience, waiting with a bottle of water. He started reading her favorite books, just so they could talk about them. She started learning about stage lighting, just to support him. One night, after a breathtaking performance, she told him, "You come alive on stage. It's beautiful." He looked at her, his eyes full of a feeling he'd never known before, and said, "You're my stage, Mara. When I'm with you, I don't have to act." The campus gossip mill went into overdrive. How come Daniel Adebayo has stopped chasing girls? I heard he deleted all his ex's numbers. I saw him carrying Mara's bag. Is this love or captivity? But the noise didn't matter anymore. One evening, his friend Shaik asked him seriously, "Daniel, you don hang boot?" Daniel smiled softly. "I didn't hang it," he replied. "I gave it to her." Mara, too, faced questions from her friends. "Babe, are you sure you can trust him? You know his history." She would reply with a calm that silenced them. "Yes, I know his history. But I also know who he is now." By their final year, they were inseparable. They studied together, walked hand in hand, and became each other's biggest supporters. He stayed up all night helping her proofread her final project. When she got an A, she ran straight into his arms, yelling, "We did it!" He lifted her up, whispering, "I told you. We're unstoppable." They still fought, of course. His temper met her stubbornness, and sparks would fly. But they always found their way back. He'd show up with a hibiscus flower plucked from the campus lawn and say, "I'm sorry, my iron lady." And she would always forgive him. For Daniel, love had always been like smoke, beautiful but impossible to hold. But Mara wasn't smoke. She was solid ground. She was the stillness he never knew he needed. With her, he didn't have to perform. He could just be. And for Mara, love was a distraction she never thought she had time for. But Daniel wasn't a distraction. He was her partner, her biggest fan, and the unexpected joy that completed her world. Their love story wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was real. The day Daniel realized he wanted to settle down came unexpectedly. It was a lazy Sunday afternoon in Succa, the kind that smelled of fried plantain and sunlight. Mara had invited him to her off-campus lodge to study, but he dozed off halfway through. When he woke up, she was sitting by the window, sunlight on her face, quietly marking his script with a red pen. She didn't notice him watching her. Her hair was tied back with a scarf, her glasses sliding down her nose. She wasn't wearing makeup, just that calm, natural beauty that came from peace of mind. And in that quiet moment, something shifted inside him. This is what home feels like, he thought. Not noise, not excitement, just peace. He sat up, smiled, and said softly, "You know, I think I could live the rest of my life with you marking my assignments." She looked up, confused, then laughed. "What are you saying again, Mr. Theater Boy?" "I'm saying," he said, reaching for her hand, "that I don't want to look for anything else again. You're it for me, Mara." Mara froze a little when he said that. His words made her heart swell, but they also opened a wound she had buried long ago. Before Daniel, there had been mistakes, choices made when she was young and searching for love in the wrong places. She had dated men who promised forever but left when life got hard. She had been naive, lonely, and too trusting. And yes, she had gone through things she wasn't proud of, things she had never spoken about to anyone. 2 abortions during her first and second year, each one leaving her emptier, colder, and convinced that she didn't deserve the kind of love she saw in movies. So when Daniel came, bright, stubborn, and unexpectedly gentle, she didn't believe it would last. She thought it was another game. But he stayed. And when he said he wanted to spend his life with her, she felt fear rise in her throat. If he knew the truth, she thought, would he still look at me the same way? That night, when he walked her back to her hostel, she almost told him. Twice, she opened her mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. "Daniel," she started softly, "there are things about me you don't know." He smiled, holding her hand. "We have time, Mara. I don't need to know everything now. I just need you." the you that's here with me. She wanted to confess everything, but his eyes were too kind, too trusting. So she swallowed her past and nodded. Okay, she whispered. And in that moment, she made a silent vow that if God ever gave her another chance to carry life, she would protect it and cherish it. From that day, Daniel changed in ways even his closest friends couldn't explain. He stopped flirting. He stopped talking about freedom and options. Instead, he started planning. He began saving from his small acting gigs and part-time photography jobs. He took her home to meet his parents during their final year, though his mother still eyed her with polite suspicion. When his father asked, "Are you sure about this girl? You know marriage is not for play." Daniel had smiled and said, "Yes, sir. She brings me peace. That's more than any beauty can give." And he meant it. He didn't care about her past. In truth, he never asked much about it. He had lived wildly too, and he knew that everyone carried shadows. What mattered to him was that Mara loved him in the now. He saw the way she prayed before exams, how she encouraged her friends, how she forgave easily. That was the woman he wanted to build a future with. Mara often watched him in disbelief. How this man, who had once been known for chasing every skirt in Sukkah, now spent his evenings helping her revise or sitting quietly beside her in the chapel. Sometimes she'd stare at him and whisper, "Why me, Daniel? Why not one of those girls who never made mistakes?" He would chuckle softly and say, "Because those girls never made me think. You did. You made me see life differently. I don't care who you were before. I only care who you are now, and who will become together." She would smile, fighting tears. And in those moments, she believed that maybe, just maybe, God was giving her another chance at life. They finished university hand in hand, ready to face the world together. He promised to marry her as soon as he got a stable job, and he kept that promise. But neither of them knew that their story, the one built on second chances and forgiveness, would soon take a turn no one could have imagined. Their wedding wasn't grand, but it was beautiful. They got married on a breezy Saturday morning in Enugu, surrounded by family, friends, and enough jollof rice to feed half the neighborhood. When the priest said, "You may now kiss your bride," Daniel's smile stretched so wide that his best man whispered, "Guy, close your mouth small before people start thinking you won lottery." Mara blushed, radiant in her white lace gown. When she looked up at him, their eyes met, and for that brief moment, time itself seemed to pause. They moved into a small two-bedroom apartment in Abuja, where Daniel had gotten a good job at an advertising firm. Mara soon found work as an English tutor at a private secondary school. Life wasn't easy, but they had each other, and that made it sweet. They would sit together at night on their small balcony, sipping Gary with groundnuts, laughing about everything from work stress to nosy neighbors. "Remember when you used to form big boy in Sukkah?" Mara would tease. Daniel would grin. "And you used to form Ice Queen, ABI? Look at us now, sharing Gary under moonlight." She would laugh and lean against his shoulder. Those were the kind of moments that made love feel simple, real, and alive. They had talked about children even before marriage. Daniel used to say, "You'll give me 2 boys and a girl. I'll name them after the seasons." Mara would laugh and reply, "So I'm just your baby factory, ABI?" He'd kiss her forehead and whisper, "You're my everything factory, love, joy, peace, and maybe children too." They both wanted to start a family early, but months passed, then a year, and no pregnancy came. At first, they joked about it. "Maybe the baby is just forming small in heaven," Daniel would say. Mara would smile, but deep down, a quiet worry began to grow. Their mothers, of course, noticed. Mara's mother called often. "My daughter, don't worry. Sometimes these things take time. God's time is the best." Daniel's mother was less gentle. "Daniel, are you sure that girl has not done something to herself in the past?" She asked one evening. "A woman that doesn't conceive quickly. You need to be prayerful." Daniel was furious. "Mummy, please, don't ever speak about Mara like that again. She's my wife, and I know her heart." When he told Mara about it later, She smiled faintly and said, "Your mother is not wrong to worry. Sometimes I worry too." He held her hand and said softly, "Don't. You're my miracle, with or without children." They visited hospitals, ran tests, and even tried herbal mixtures. Every result came back normal. No medical issue, the doctor said. Sometimes conception just takes time. So they waited. They prayed together every night before bed, hands clasped tightly, whispering their hope to God. Daniel would sometimes press his ear gently against her stomach and say playfully, "I'm just checking if my future footballer is warming up." Mara would laugh and say, "He's still in preseason, a beg." Even in their waiting, they were happy. Without children, they poured their love into each other. On weekends, they went to the park. They cooked together, sang together, and just sat quietly watching the rain. Daniel loved watching her teach her students online. "You talk to them like they're your children," he once said. She smiled softly. "Maybe I'm practicing." He leaned in, kissed her hand, and said, "Then I'm practicing to be the proudest father alive." Their love deepened, becoming a quiet testament to their commitment in the face of uncertainty. But their story was far from over, and a test greater than any they had faced was just around the corner. 3 years after their wedding, Daniel and Mara still looked like the perfect couple from the outside. They were always together, always smiling, always speaking softly to each other. But behind those smiles, there were long nights filled with silent tears. Every night, after Daniel drifted off to sleep, Mara would lie awake, just staring at the lazy spin of the ceiling fan. The only sound was the faint hum of the generator outside. And then, the tears would start. She cried quietly, pressing her face into the pillow so Daniel wouldn't hear. Sometimes, she'd get up and go to the bathroom, whispering to her reflection, "God, what have I done wrong? Please, just one child. Just one." She tried everything: herbal teas, fasting, prayer sessions, and even the local remedies her aunties swore by. She joined every Women Believing God for the Fruit of the Womb group she could find. She put on a brave face during the day, but her heart broke a little more each night. Daniel, on the other hand, was thriving. His advertising firm was taking off, and promotions came one after another. Clients loved his creativity and his charisma. He was becoming a man people looked up to. He'd come home tired but always cheerful, tossing his keys on the table and kissing Mara on the forehead. "How's my queen?" he'd ask with that same playful grin. And she'd smile back, hiding her sadness. "Your queen is fine, my king." He never lost faith that they would have children one day. "God's timing is perfect," he'd always say. "Let's just keep living, keep loving." And for a while, Mara forced herself to believe it too. But their joy was kept alive by small traditions. Evening walks, surprise notes left on the fridge, and quiet prayers whispered over steaming plates of yam porridge. Their love grew deeper, stronger, like iron forged in fire. On their second anniversary, Daniel gave her a small gold necklace engraved with the words, "Still us." That night, he told her, "Even if we never have children, I'll still wake up every morning grateful that I have you." Tears filled Mara's eyes. She looked at this man who loved her so completely and made a silent promise: "I will never take him for granted." She just didn't know their time together was more limited than she could ever imagine. As the years passed, the whispers started. At church, people would say with pity, "Mara, your husband is doing so well. We are still praying with you for your own blessing." At family gatherings, older women would pull her aside. "My dear, maybe you should try another hospital. Have you told your husband to check himself too?" Each word was like a knife twisting in her gut. She could feel the unspoken questions in people's eyes. How can a man like this not have a child yet? A deep fear began to grow in Mara's heart, a fear she couldn't voice. What if Daniel gets tired? What if he wakes up one day and realizes he could have had a family with someone else? She knew he loved her, but she also knew the world they lived in wasn't kind to a childless woman. She'd seen how sympathy could curdle into gossip and mockery. Lying awake at night, Her hand on her empty belly, she'd whisper, "If anything happens to him, what will I have left? No child, no proof that he ever loved me." And that thought terrified her more than anything. Her search for a solution became an obsession. She visited fertility clinics in secret, tried treatments, prayed through the night, and gave generously in church, always with the same written prayer: "Lord, bless me with a child before it's too late." She started avoiding friends with children because the sound of baby laughter was too painful. But with every new achievement of Daniel's, her fear grew. What will I become if I lose him? One night, after a party celebrating another of Daniel's promotions, she broke down. He was asleep, still smiling, and she sat beside him, holding his hand, tears streaming down her face. "God," she whispered, "I'm happy for him, I truly am. But please, don't let me be empty if you ever take him away. Please, give me something to remember him by. A child. Just one. 8 years." That's how long they had waited. Mara was 36, and Daniel had just turned 40. They stopped going to baby showers and stopped answering calls from relatives asking for good news. But they never stopped believing. One Sunday, Mara's old friend, Ngozi, came to visit. "My sister," Ngozi began softly, "I know a fertility doctor, a real professional named Dr. Lydia Bacco. She helped my cousin after 9 years. Now, that woman is chasing twins around her house." Mara was hesitant. "Ngozi, we've been everywhere. They all say nothing is wrong." Ngozi squeezed her hand. "Just go, Mara. One more time." That evening, Mara told Daniel. He sighed and said, "All right, let's try. One more time. For peace of mind." A week later, they were at the Grace Life Fertility Center. Dr. Lydia Bacco, a warm and confident woman, listened to their story. "Don't lose hope," she said gently. "We'll run a full series of tests." They spent the entire day at the clinic, going through blood work, scans, and endless questions. 3 days later, they were back in the doctor's office. Mara's palms were sweaty. Dr. Bacco looked up from her papers. "Mr. and Mrs. Adebayo," she began, "your results show that while you're both healthy, there are a few issues affecting conception." Mara's heart pounded. "What kind of issues, doctor?" Dr. Bacco adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Adebayo, your sperm count is quite low, about 15 million per milliliter. The normal range is above 40 million. This means the sperm are few and aren't swimming as fast as they should." Daniel blinked, silent for a moment. "So, I'm the problem?" "No," the doctor said quickly. "You're part of the challenge. And Mrs. Adebayo also needs help. Her hormone levels show low ovarian activity. That means her eggs are not maturing properly, something we call diminished ovarian reserve. But both of these can be managed." Mara felt the words wash over her like cold water. Low sperm count. Egg boost. She glanced at Daniel, expecting him to look broken. But he was calm, far too calm. "What's the next step?" he asked quietly. Dr. Bacco smiled. "Treatment. Medication for both of you. We can do intrauterine insemination, or even IVF if you can afford it. I'll give you time to think and pray." The drive home was quiet. The city lights blurred past as neither of them spoke. The radio played soft gospel music, but it felt distant, like it was meant for someone else. Finally, Mara said in a small voice, "Daniel, I'm so sorry." He turned to her, surprised. "Sorry? For what?" "For not being able to give you a child." He cut her off gently. "Mara, stop. It's not your fault. None of this is your fault. And don't say sorry again." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. He reached for her hand and held it tightly on his lap, his thumb rubbing slow circles over her skin. "Listen," he said softly, "we're in this together. We'll try whatever we can. If it doesn't happen, then so be it. You're my family, Mara. You always have been." She wanted to believe him. She really did. But that night, after he fell asleep, she went into the bathroom, closed the door, and cried silently into her towel. A few weeks later, they started treatment. Daniel took supplements and medications to boost his count. Mara was placed on hormonal injections and vitamins to stimulate egg growth. It wasn't easy. There were days she felt dizzy, moody, or bloated. Days Daniel came home late, exhausted but still trying to stay strong for her. Sometimes they fought, small arguments that came from stress, not anger. But every time, they found their way back to each other's arms. When the doctor told them that their next cycle might be the breakthrough, they both knelt down together that night and prayed. Daniel's voice was steady as he said, "God, even if you delay, don't deny us." Mara whispered through tears, "Amen." The medications came with instructions and promises, tiny tablets, daily injections, and vitamins that filled the kitchen counter like a small pharmacy. But with them also came something unexpected. Life began to stir again. For the first time in years, Mara felt a change in her body and in her heart. Within the first week of treatment, she began to feel lighter. Her moods improved, her skin glowed, and there was a new warmth in her body that she couldn't quite explain. She woke up early, full of energy, humming as she cooked breakfast. Daniel noticed it immediately. "Aha, see my madam shining like morning sun," he teased one morning as he came out of the bathroom. She smiled, flipping plantain on the frying pan. "It's this medicine, oh. Maybe it's working." He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Then I love the medicine already." For the first time in a long while, the house was full of laughter again. Real laughter, not the kind they used to fake for visitors or relatives. The treatments didn't just heal their bodies, they rekindled something deeper. Daniel found himself drawn to her like never before. The medication came with side effects, increased testosterone, stronger urges. At first, it surprised him. Then it delighted him. Every night, he reached for her. Every morning, he still wanted her. And she was just as eager. The hormones that boosted her eggs seemed to awaken something she had forgotten about herself. The woman in her, not just the wife. Their love life became alive again. They laughed about it. Dr. Baco didn't tell us the medicine will turn us into teenagers again. Daniel joked one night, breathless with laughter. Mara giggled and said, "If it brings baby, I don't mind." For the first time in 8 years, she dared to hope again. Each morning, she marked her calendar, tracking her ovulation days like a soldier preparing for battle. She bought new test kits, ate better, prayed harder. When she looked in the mirror, she saw not the woman broken by years of waiting, but a woman becoming whole again. Daniel felt it too, the renewed closeness, the excitement of trying again, the laughter that filled the once quiet house. They would sit together on the bed, talking late into the night. He would rest his hand gently on her belly and whisper, "Our miracle is coming soon. I can feel it." She would smile, her heart swelling with faith. "I can feel it too." By the end of the first month, Dr. Baco scheduled them for another consultation to check their progress. She was pleased with the results. "Your body is responding well, Mara," she said, smiling. "Your hormone levels have improved. And Daniel, your count is increasing steadily. Keep up the medication, and during your next ovulation, you can try naturally again." They left the clinic holding hands, hearts bursting with gratitude. That evening, Mara cooked his favorite meal, pounded yam with a goosey soup and goat meat. They ate together, laughing, talking about baby names again, about the room they would decorate when the child finally came. Daniel was glowing, strong, handsome, full of life. His career was booming, his wife was happy, and hope was finally visible. They went to bed that night full of laughter, unaware that fate was already shifting in the shadows. A few days later, as Mara prepared her chart for her next ovulation cycle, Daniel came home late from a client meeting. It was raining, a soft, steady Abuja rain. He entered the room, drenched and smiling. "You're still awake?" he asked. "I was waiting for you," she said softly. He walked to her, dripping, and kissed her forehead. "This time, we'll get it right," he whispered, his hands sliding around her waist. That night, they loved each other with renewed hope, with joy, laughter, and a quiet prayer on their lips. Neither of them knew it would be their last night together as husband and wife. The night before had been filled with laughter and quiet promises. Mara had stayed up late, marking her fertility calendar, counting the days. According to her calculations, the next day, Tuesday, would be her ovulation day. Everything had been planned perfectly. Tomorrow night, Daniel had whispered before they slept, "We'll try again. This time, it will happen." She smiled sleepily against his chest. "Amen, my love. Amen." They both drifted to sleep believing in that promise, not knowing it would never come to pass. The next morning, the sun rose bright over Abuja. Daniel woke up early, dressed in a crisp blue shirt, and packed his small travel bag. He was heading to Jos for a 2-day business trip, a routine client meeting he had done many times before. Mara followed him to the door, her wrapper tied loosely around her chest. "Drive safe, please," she said, holding onto his arm. "And don't forget to eat something." He smiled, brushing his thumb over her cheek. "Yes, madam. I'll call you once I get there." She hesitated, her heart heavy for no reason she could explain. You're not going to kiss me goodbye?" she teased softly. He grinned, leaned in, and kissed her forehead. "If I kiss you properly now, I won't leave," he joked. "Let me go and come back this evening. We have work to do tonight." She laughed, shaking her head shyly. "Just go, Jair, before you miss your flight." He winked, grabbed his keys, and left. Mara stood by the window, watching him drive away, his taillights fading into the morning traffic. If only she knew that would be the last time she would ever see him alive. It was around 11:47 a.m. when her phone rang. She was in the kitchen, washing plates and humming to herself, when she saw an unknown number flash on her screen. "Hello. Good morning," she answered cheerfully. "Good morning, Ma. Are you Mrs. Adebayo?" "Yes, I am." "Who is speaking, please?" There was a pause, the kind that makes the world hold its breath. "This is from Kefi General Hospital, Ma. Please, are you related to Mr. Daniel Adebayo? He was involved in a motor accident along the Abuja-Jos Expressway this morning." Her hand froze midair. The plate slipped from her fingers and shattered in the sink. Her voice trembled. "Accident? No, no, that can't be. He just left this morning. He called me an hour ago." "I'm very sorry, Ma." The voice continued gently. "He was brought in unconscious, but he didn't make it." The phone fell from her hand. For a moment, everything went silent. The sound of the generator outside faded. The air became heavy. The world itself seemed to tilt. She sank to the floor, her eyes wide, her lips moving without sound. "He didn't make it." The words echoed in her head, but they didn't make sense. Neighbors rushed in when they heard her scream. They tried to hold her, to calm her, but she pushed them away. "Let me go? They're lying. My husband is not dead. He just left this morning," she cried, trembling as she fumbled for her car keys. Her friend Ngozi arrived minutes later and insisted on driving her to the hospital in Kefi. The journey felt endless. Every second was a battle between faith and fear. All the while, she kept whispering, "He's okay. I know he's okay. Maybe they made a mistake. Maybe it's someone else." When they arrived at the hospital, a nurse led them through the corridor, past rows of white curtains and the smell of disinfectant. "Are you Mrs. Adebayo?" the nurse asked softly again. Mara nodded weakly, gripping Ngozi's hand. The nurse opened a door at the end of the hall. Inside, the air was cold. Too cold. A white sheet covered a still body on a metal bed. "Ma, you need to confirm," the nurse whispered. Mara took one shaky step forward. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it would burst. She reached for the edge of the sheet, her hands trembling. As the cloth fell away, she saw his face. Daniel. Her Daniel. Peaceful. Still. Gone. She let out a sound that didn't seem human, a raw, guttural cry that echoed through the hospital corridor. She fell to her knees beside him, clutching his cold hand, shaking him violently. "Daniel, wake up. Please, wake up. You promised me. You said tonight." Her voice broke again and again until her strength failed her. Ngozi wept silently behind her, unable to move. Slowly, the reality sank in. His family would come soon. They would see her alone, childless, and might blame her. In their eyes, without a child, she might have no place in their home anymore. A cold fear settled in her chest, heavier than grief itself. What will I do? Where will I go? How will I survive without him? She wiped her tears and forced herself to speak, her voice trembling but firm. Everyone, please, leave me alone. I want to be with him, she said to the nurses and relatives who had come to console her. They hesitated, but the sorrow in her eyes made them step back. Slowly, they left the room, murmuring prayers and words of condolence. Mara was left alone with Daniel, the quiet of the house pressing in on her. She wept for hours, her hands clutching his. Her thoughts raced. The years of hope, the struggle with infertility, the dreams of their child that would never be. What will happen to Mara now? How will she navigate a world that has been so cruel to her? Her future hangs in the balance, and her journey is just beginning. Imagine a woman, her world shattered by the sudden passing of her beloved husband. As she sits beside him, reeling from the shock, a cold wave of fear washes over her. She remembers conversations, whispers, the unsettling feeling that his family never truly accepted her. In her grief, a terrifying thought takes root. What if they come to cast her and her mother out, leaving them with nothing? The home they built together, the life they shared, all of it could be taken away in an instant. Panic sets in. She knows she needs to secure a future for herself and her mother. But how? In this moment of desperation, her mind races, searching for any possible solution, any way to prove her connection to the man she loved and the legacy he left behind. She privately went to buy a syringe. She went back to where his remain is lying, pierced his testicles, tried to extract from semen from it. When she saw little white fluid in it, she knew what it was. She quickly took off her clothes and inserted his semen in her body, hoping for implantation. This was her last hope. This story isn't just about loss. It's about the fierce, instinctual drive to protect the ones we love. It is a powerful reminder of the lengths a person might go to when pushed to the absolute edge, fighting for their place in the world against overwhelming odds. The house was heavy with the weight of mourning. Relatives had come from all over, their voices a low hum of condolences and whispered prayers. But amidst the sorrow, Mara felt the sharp sting of their judgment. They looked at her, a childless widow, and saw an empty space in her late husband Daniel's home. Every hushed conversation, every sideways glance felt like a tiny cut. A childless widow, they'd murmur. There's nothing to keep her here after the funeral. She moved like a ghost through the home they had built together, seeking refuge by Daniel's resting place in their bedroom. Kneeling, she prayed with every fiber of her being, tears carving paths down her cheeks. Please, God, she whispered, her voice cracking. Let me have a child. Just one more chance before they send me away. Let it be his, please, let it be real. Days bled into one another, filled with the somber preparations for the funeral. Her body was heavy with sorrow. But then, something else began to stir. It was a subtle change at first, a faint flutter deep within her, a warmth that spread through her like sunlight breaking through a storm. With a heart pounding against her ribs, she went to a doctor in secret. The test came back. It was positive. Just 1 week before she was to lay her husband to rest, Mara discovered she was pregnant. The news was a tidal wave of joy and terror. She had the miracle she had desperately prayed for. But what would Daniel's family say? Would they see it as a divine blessing, a sign of her unending love? Or would they accuse her of a terrible deceit? Gathering every ounce of courage she had, she decided to tell them. The skepticism was immediate and sharp. Daniel's older brother, Chaik, stood before her, his arms crossed, his expression a mask of disbelief. Are you serious, Mara? He asked, his voice laced with suspicion. After everything that has happened, you expect us to believe you are pregnant with Daniel's child? Yes, Mara said, her voice a quiet tremor, her hands shaking at her sides. I swear to you it's his. God has blessed me with this child, even now. Murmurs rippled through the room. Heads shook in doubt. We need proof. A voice from the crowd declared. We cannot just take your word for it. It was another trial, another mountain to climb, but Mara agreed to a DNA test. She had nothing to hide. The days leading up to the results were agonizing. But when the envelope was finally opened, the truth was laid bare, undeniable and absolute. It was Daniel's child. A wave of shock washed over the room. Eyes that had been narrowed in judgment widened in disbelief. Hands that had been folded in condemnation trembled. Chaik looked at the paper, then at Mara, his voice softening into something close to reverence. This is his. Yes, Mara whispered, her hand protectively covering her belly. He is our child. He will carry Daniel's name, his blood, and his legacy. In that moment, the tide began to turn. The hardened hearts of relatives who had doubted her began to soften. They started visiting, offering tentative smiles and kind words. The miracle of a new life had shattered the walls of grief and suspicion. Mara, who had once been terrified of being cast aside, now stood tall. Her heart was still broken, mourning the love of her life, but now she had hope, a living, breathing promise of Daniel that no one could ever take away. She would often place a hand on her belly and whisper, "Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, my love. I will raise our child with all the love you gave me. You may be gone, but a part of you will live on forever." Mara's pregnancy progressed, each day a delicate balance of joy and fear. Joy, because a life stirred inside her, a tangible reminder of Daniel. Fear, because she knew the world could be unkind, and in many ways, she was facing it alone. Daniel's family, however, was slowly coming around. Chaik, in particular, started visiting more often, offering practical help and a listening ear. I never imagined this was possible, he admitted one afternoon, as Mara rested on the veranda. But if this child is Daniel's, then we have a responsibility. To him, and to this baby. Mara nodded, tears welling in her eyes. All I want is to do right by him, and by our baby. Of course, some relatives remained distant, their whispers of doubt never fully fading, but Mara learned to ignore them. She focused on her health and on her growing child. Pregnancy wasn't easy. The aches and nausea were constant companions. But she found strength in talking to her baby every day, telling stories about the wonderful man his father was. Your father was so kind and smart and full of laughter, she'd whisper to her belly in the quiet of the night. He loved you even before you existed. I promise, I will tell you everything about him. Her closest friend, Ngozi, was her rock. She was there for every doctor's appointment, every moment of doubt. You are so strong, Mara, Ngozi would say, squeezing her hand. Daniel would be so proud of you. And this miracle baby will grow up knowing you fought for him every single day. As her pregnancy advanced into the final trimester, Mara was radiant. The baby's kicks were a constant, reassuring presence. I'm here, they seemed to say. I'm real. I'm your hope. Doctors monitored her closely, aware of the delicate nature of her situation. But with every scan, every strong heartbeat, her resolve grew. I will meet you soon, my love, she'd whisper. Your father would be so proud. Finally, the day arrived. The labor was long and grueling, but Mara was not alone. Doctors, nurses, and her closest family, including Chaik, were by her side. And then, a tiny, powerful cry cut through the silence of the room. Her baby was here. A boy, healthy, strong, and so very alive. As they placed him on her chest, tears of pure, unadulterated joy streamed down Mara's face. Welcome, she sobbed. Welcome, my darling. You are Daniel's child. You are our miracle. Standing beside her, Chaik looked at the baby, his voice filled with emotion. He looks just like Daniel, he whispered. Just like him. And for the first time in months, a profound peace settled over Mara's heart. Life had returned to her home. Hope, in the form of a tiny, perfect heartbeat, had taken root, and was ready to grow. Thank you so much for watching. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories.